At the appointed time of 9:16, we'll open a election law and municipal affairs committee. Representative Long, do you mind leading us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Senator. Our first order of business is close hearing on amendment number 25-1807S, and I recognize Senator Gray.
Thank you. My name is James Gray. I represent Senate District 6, which starts up in Alton, Gimleton, comes down Route 11 to Rochester and Stratford. Much was said last year about taking away the affidavits. Certainly last year, as the committee will remember, I wrote a Bill 370, which did a lot of things that are in this amendment. We do not want to take over providing the proof that a voter needs of citizenship, domicile, identity, and age. But if we've got the records, why shouldn't we use those records? And that's what the bulk of this bill is. The DMV has data that we use right now to go back and forth between and verify the information that we have. We've got vital records, which we both have birth certificate information and also marriage certificate information for people who were born or married in the state. And we've got the database itself. Secretary of State did ask me, instead of saying currently registered, to say previously or currently registered for proof of citizenship and age, which is what it says right now in the other parts of the statute. So I would propose to do that when we exec the bill. But it's, again, we are not taking over the responsibility for providing that information, but if we have it, there's no reason why we couldn't use it. This would apply when somebody tries to register at the town hall or city hall, but it also apply on election day. Whether that connection to that information is via the phone, by calling somebody up that's there with the data, by internet access, having the information on a tablet, all of that is left up to the Secretary of State to figure out how to do it. He also would like the dates for Section 9 and 10, I believe, moved out to December, but that will still support the town elections coming in the spring. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Your amendment has generated much discussion, Chairman. So thank you for introducing this. I hear the weaving you're doing together in your introduction to the amendment. I think some questions might be answered just to hear you speak to the language in line on page 2, lines 19 and 20. The amendment reads, access to such data shall not relieve the applicant of the responsibility to provide appropriate proof of voter qualifications. I wondered if the sponsor might be open to discussing, just clarifying how the information this amendment purports to provide balances with that applicant of the responsibility to bring proof with them to the polls.
Again, this bill is not to replace their obligation, okay? They have, but as we all know, there was more than 100 voters in the last elections that were turned away. At least one time, I'm sure that many of them went and got their birth certificate. You know, I've got mine in the strong box, you know, and it was issued 75 3/4 years ago. So, you know, I still have it. And I do have a real ID and all that other stuff. But if we've got the record, and it's not an exorbitant fee to be able to use those records to verify it, I think it's a common sense thing to do.
Thank you. No, all set. Thank
Any
you.
further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Gray. Next, we'll take, up Liz.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to speak. I'm Liz Tentarelli. I'm president of the Nonpartisan League of Women Voters of New Hampshire. And I have a couple of concerns about this amendment. I don't question the intent at all. If there's a way that we can help people provide information that they need to access that information, that's wonderful. But I really am worried about the fall elections. That is, we've got big city elections coming up. We know many people do register same day, especially in the cities where moving from apartment to apartment is very common. And I'm worried that if people, potential voters, believe that they can go in without all the documents that 1569 currently requires, and then we can't connect them to these databases and we can't get those documents, it will be too late for them to register. We could have fall elections in the cities that fail because we'll be turning away large numbers of people. And that's the last thing any of us want. We want our elections to be run as well as they have been in the past. The other thing is that this amendment includes no funding for any of this. And I know we're facing the big budget hearing today. Oh, I'm not supposed to mention that, sorry. It's another bill. But I think we all realize that this amendment may require additional funding and it's not in here. And I think that's another issue. So I'm hoping that the committee will consider this an idea that needs to be fleshed out. It could be done next year if you retain this bill. But I don't think this is the bill that we want to pass now if we're trying to create confidence in our elections and help more people vote. It will help a few. It won't help everyone. I'll take questions if there are any.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Next up is Joan.
Hi, thank you to the committee for hearing my testimony. Joan Dargy, New Hampshire City and Town Clerk's president. I've been asked by the board to just state we like that you're adding some additional ways for us to qualify voters, which is very helpful. And the only thing that the group wanted me to point out is that we still have an issue with our residents that are in nursing homes. A lot of them, for example, marriage certificates are only in the Vital Records database 1959 and newer. Anything prior to 1959, you have to go to the city or town. We're just a little concerned on election day with the access to the database because a lot of the checklist supervisors are not online. So if there was a way to add some more access to be able to do this, that'd be helpful. And the group just wanted me to mention those concerns.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Mackenzie.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Mackenzie Taylor. I'm the director of the New Hampshire Campaign for Voting Rights, which is a campaign or a project of America Votes New Hampshire. We agree that we should make every effort to ensure that no voters are turned away solely for lack of documents if they are eligible, and that we should work on connecting these databases state, federal, whatever we have, to be able to help people prove some of those documentation if they need them to register to vote, and just so we have that information broadly. But in the work, as was mentioned, that New Hampshire Campaign for Voting Rights has done so far this year with observers at polling places during town meeting, we have found at least 114 voters who were turned away, most of whom when they were attempting to register, and the vast majority of those folks because they lacked proof of citizenship specifically, either because they didn't know they had to bring it with them or because they did not have access to it at all for one reason or another. So while we agree that there should be more reasons or more ways to ensure that someone can register, we do have some specific questions and concerns, especially around the implementation of this bill as it's currently written. So we would encourage the committee to maybe take a little more time to be able to work on it and ensure that it's implemented in a way that works both for voters in both steps of the process, early at their clerk's office and on election day, and for our election officials. So a couple of those concerns we wanted to air. One, that we need to make sure there are details about the system that clerks and election officials can use to access that voter information about voters, including what funding is available. So is this something that is offline on a tablet so that folks who don't have internet at their polling places have access to, this information, for example, integrated with the voter file, or is it something where there needs to be a phone call? Is it something that can only be accessed via the internet? Those are important questions because it determines how much this can be used and in what polling places across the state. Also, because the majority of folks in New Hampshire register on election day, we had really long lines in the general election. I waited 45 minutes in line just to update my name because I didn't have a chance to go before election day. So we have some concerns about if there is a long process at the table, whether that be a phone call, looking something up in a database that takes many minutes, even how much that can affect the overall registration process. And I think we could maybe alleviate some of those concerns if we had that process more specifically laid out ahead of time, what actually is possible with this and what is not possible, having some more details on, again, the implementation and how all these systems work together. And we want to make sure that, again, that this is workable for folks registering on election day, how it works, how it can work, and that our election officials understand that process for their polling places as well. So we believe the best way to ensure no one will be turned away is to bring back affidavits, but being able to connect some of these systems, obviously in the right way, is moving in the right direction, and also having some systems that we could work in the future to have ways to more easily register and check these databases ahead of time, ahead of election day. It removes the burden of everything being kind of so high stakes when the one time is that the person can come in, register, and vote. And if something goes wrong, something takes too long, they lose their chance to do that. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? I have one.
Great. Happy to take it.
So Senator Gray uses a great term they call an acid test, right? Every citizen must pass the acid test to vote, right? They have to prove their
Right.
age, they have to prove their citizenship, they have to prove their identity, and then they have to prove their domicile, right? That's a constitutional obligation that's in there. My question is, do you think it's the citizen's obligation to prove that? Or does the state have an obligation there to help them?
So thanks for the question. I would say the constitutional requirement is that they do meet all those criteria. It's not in the Constitution. They have to prove them with documents. They have to, for a long time, they were able to attest, yes, I meet those criteria. And if someone, for example, signed an affidavit saying they were a citizen and they were not, there were serious penalties with that, including likely deportation. I believe that with the current legislation that we have and the fact that we do need to prove those pieces, that there is definitely room for, if we already have, for example, if someone got a real ID, my real ID is not proof of citizenship, but when I got it, I did prove my citizenship. I think we can make it a lot easier on voters, and I think this is something that other states have done, even with proof of citizenship laws, where they make it possible to, if we already know that information as the state, we can remove that burden from the voter if we are set on removing and not having the affidavits anymore.
So again, I get to the thrust of my question, which was, does the citizen have any obligation in this to prove that they are who they say they are, that they're a citizen, that they're eligible to vote? Do they have any obligation in this conversation?
They, under the current law, we have changed that, so they have to prove that, but I don't think that's a constitutional requirement.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Bob Perry.
Good morning, members of the committee. I speak to the non-germane amendment to 464. The amendment continues to rely on information from the Federal Social Security Administration, among other agencies of government, to determine voter eligibility in an unknown number of cases involving inconsistencies. It is known that Social Security staff has already been reduced by approximately 2,000 employees. It may not be as well known that another 7,000 are expected to be eliminated, whether voluntarily or involuntary, that is, with or without incentives, creating a situation some in the administration are calling a crisis. Common sense allows me to speculate that the elimination of as many as 9,000 employees at the Social Security Administration will have a negative impact on the agency's responsibilities to us and to the state, which may render the agency an unreliable partner for purposes of interacting with New Hampshire government, and may also produce mistakes that, if left unresolved, will disenfranchise eligible voters. I understand my concerns cannot be rectified anytime soon, but may prove to be necessary fixes in future legislation. Thank you, and I provide a couple of links to what I've stated.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is Olivia.
Good morning, Chairman Lang and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Olivia Zink, a voter in Franklin, and I'm the Executive Director of Open Democracy, a nonpartisan nonprofit. We're here in opposition to the amendment. There is vague campaign finance laws that this is changing and unclear voter changes. We're fine with the jury duty parts of this bill if there's staff to implement them. I want to thank you for the goal of this amendment. I think if the government has documents like our passport or birth certificates, and a citizen has a house fire and doesn't have access to those documents, having a partnership, the goal is amazing, but I do have concerns about how we can achieve this so that we don't leave any eligible voter turned away. My first concern is on page 1, line 23. We say determine voters' eligibility. I think it might be more clear if you say eligible voters, because if a voter isn't eligible, then they're not a voter. On page 2, lines 10 and 11, we say elected officials, but there are election officials, but there are 11 of them. Which ones are we referring to? There is no definition for which one. Also, the federal court in the executive order has, I'd urge the committee to look at what that judge's order. Page 1, line 9, the voter database, it says it must be entered, but it's unclear whether the Secretary of State is entering it, the IT department is entering it, or if the supervisors of the checklist are required to enter the data. So I have a concern on that. Page 1, line 33. Or other reasonable documents. I think there is an inconsistent standard for one's fundamental right to vote in that section. Page 2, line 6. Also, it's not clear who is supposed to be doing this. It just says the election.
Excuse me, Olivia.
yeah.
So just know your lines and references aren't matching up to the actual amendment we had before
sorry?
us, just to let you know. So we're trying to follow, figure out where you are, and the senators have a quizzical look because they don't line up. And when you say page 1, line 9, we look like that's not what it says on my piece of paper.
Okay, sorry. I will re-look at this because line 9, voter database. Oh, okay, yeah, I see. To be entered is line 17. Apologize for that. Okay. on the centralized voter registration section, it says access to this data shall not relieve the applicant's responsibility for proving the voter qualifications. My concern is with that sentence, it seems like what we're trying to do is help a voter. So I think there should be some grammatical fix to that so that there's not confusion of like, oh, well, I can see that you have your birth certificate, but it's your responsibility to prove your birth certificate, so we're not going to help you register to vote. So I have some concerns about that language. Also wanted to, this bill goes into effect 180 days after the election. But which election, like, will the voter access be available before 2030? Like, there's no timeline on this bill for when this database will be created. Is it the 180 days after this bill is created? Or will we be ready in time for, probably not the 6 elections on March 13th, but Franklin has municipal elections in October. There's 11 cities that have November elections. So maybe thinking about, is there a way to phase this in? Like just entering the data for Franklin for the October Franklin elections, test it, see how it works, then enter the data for all of the cities before the November election. So you might want to change the effective date for implementation if you are able to get the data for the municipal elections. I'm going to switch gears to talk about reporting for political committees. I have some concerns about the fairs. So if you're having a bake sale, Senator Lang, and I make whoopie pies for your bake sale for the Samberton General Store, you had to report in kind that I've baked these things, and then you have to report who buys those things. But we have millions of dollars coming into candidates through this loophole through PACs. But we're worried about the $3 that somebody might make off of a whoopie pie sale. This could be, we could fix these robust reporting standards, but it also turns out that it might be honor system or create a slush fund for candidates. So I do think that we could work on addressing that. And also it says that 5 p.m. According to the schedule, but why are we only fixing 5 p.m. in that statute, and why are we not addressing all the other sections of reporting? So one report is due at 5 p.m., but the rest of them can be submitted on midnight of that night. So if we're addressing the 5 p.m., I think just to address it consistently throughout the statute. And with that, I will happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the senators? So Olivia, I think the intent of that fair language was strictly not to create an accidental criminal, right? Where someone shows up at a fair and buys a t-shirt for $10 that goes to my campaign fund, and then they show up at 3 other events and spend $20, but I didn't take their name because they never were a $50 direct contribution, and I have no idea, I just broke the law because I've taken 3 under the limit donations that would normally be unreported, but it's from the same person that may have just dropped it in. I think that's the idea, is that you potentially could create a crime from a candidate who had no intention of actually committing a crime.
Right. And I think that's a small fish of the people who make a $10 contribution and buy a pie, or, you know, give 3 $10 cash donations. I think that's, like, compared to the millions of dollars that we saw in the election come from unreported out-of-state money, I think that we're worrying about the wrong thing here. But I get that, you know, you shouldn't take my $10 cash donation for a t-shirt and $10, you know, like, it's a lot to report all of those things. So, but I just urge you to look at that language, because I think you're trying to resolve a problem, but I don't know that you're actually succeeding in the language you're proposing in this amendment.
And one last question for me. Again, the same question I asked before. Do you think the voter has any obligation in passing the acid test and providing data to pass the acid test, the age, citizenship, identity, and domicile, that they have any burden on them, or is it all on the state?
I think the voter has some burden. Most voters show their driver's license. Most voters bring whatever document they have. But if say a voter has a house fire and their birth certificate has gone up in flames and they don't have a copy anymore, but the government has it in a database, I think that the government could work with that voter to ensure that they could register to vote. And I think it should be a partnership. My original birth certificate is in my baby book at my mom's house. If my mom texts me a picture of that, will the election official take it? Or do I need to go to my mom's house, get the original birth certificate, and come back? And I think that making sure that there's clarification about the partnership, because if a voter was born out of state, New Hampshire doesn't have records to show their birth certificate. So we're only actually providing this service for the third of voters that I think it's about a third of voters that are actually born in New Hampshire. But I also think there's a higher burden for married women because if you change your name, or somebody who was a foster care kid whose name was changed, there are higher burdens for some voters. Whereas Senator Lang, did you ever change your name? You might not have, your birth certificate has the same name, so you might not have a same burden that another voter might have.
Witness protection program, mate. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, those voters are, I mean, we have statutes that protect domestic violence, people who've been in domestic violence. So there are particular circumstances that I think we should be sensitive to. And if those records exist, like the DMV, I have a real ID. The DMV knows they've seen my birth certificate. I trust that if the DMV worker has seen my driver's license, then the election worker can know that I was also a U.S. citizen. So I think that it's important for us to make systems that are efficient, so that we aren't creating additional burdens and hoops.
Great. Any further, Senator?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Just to clarify, the concern with the language in line 19 and 20 is limited to understanding if this information is provided some other way, that it doesn't need to be also provided by the voter. We're literally just trying to understand the language.
I would love clarification on that language, because I do think saying that if the voter, it's the voter's responsibility. So if my clerk can look me up and say, or like look my daughter up because she was born in New Hampshire and say that she was born on this date. I mean, my daughter's 15, so she's not quite old enough yet, but in 3 years, can look her up and say she was born here. And then she does, her original birth certificate. My daughter's original birth certificate is in a fireproof case in my house, but I don't know that everybody keeps those documents as secure as, I didn't buy a fireproof case until I started thinking about voters who lost documents in a fire.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Olivia. Is there any other sign-up sheet over there?
I would like to speak very briefly, if I can.
Just state your name and where you're from.
Andrew Harmon. Hello again, Senator Lang. I'm from the town of New Hampton. I wasn't originally going to speak, but hearing some of the questions that were asked, I thought that I could help possibly answer some of those. In terms of the burden of the voter having to prove their citizenship, amongst other things, I had to move back to New Hampton from the town of Keene, where I was living in during the pandemic, because I needed to help support my mom with her mother. And for about 6 months, I was unable to get my information updated. So I went to try and vote in the local town election. I had a copy of my birth certificate with me, but it was rejected because of the style it was used, and because I was born in California, they thought it looked fake, even though the people who were running the local elections were the same officials that had been running it for most of my life, some of which whom I went to school with. It is probably necessary for the voter to show some proof, but the more that you tighten the restrictions on being able to show that proof, the harder and harder it will become for people to be able to meet that obligation. I myself had to wait several months for the DMV in California to get back to me and that was after having to go through multiple attempts to reach somebody out there to be able to start the process of getting my birth certificate updated so I could get the real ID. I also want to speak very briefly to the online access. Even if there is internet available in some locations, being able to access the information may not still work. I literally tried to look up the wording because I'd only found out about this amendment yesterday, and I couldn't even access the Senate meeting schedule, even though my smartphone has internet capability. So I would just urge that you try and think about all the different possible breakpoints in the system for the database, and therefore push the date out further for trying to establish that system, as the more you can address issues at the beginning, the easier and smoother it will be for the people trying to use that system and follow the rules. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else like to testify on amendment number 1807S? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on amendment 1807S. There were, we have a, we don't have a sign.
the sign-in sheet for the online sheet. The system isn't capable of doing that right now. So. Right. So we'll start the public hearing on the next bill. And that is House Bill 367. All right, on clear at the top. Oh.
All right,
Go
thank
ahead
you.
when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Gray, and esteemed members of the Election Law Committee here. For the record, my name is Robert Wary. I'm a representative from Hillsborough District 13, the great town of Hudson, New Hampshire. I'd just like to introduce House Bill 367. It does a couple of things in terms of providing additional information on how to transition from an unofficial ballot system to a official ballot system that is either partisan or nonpartisan. It also cleans up some language, some archaic language about towns which have a population of 4,500, which was a standard set many years ago, I think in the early 70s. And that is really no longer applicable and has been cleaned up from the RSAs in a number of other areas, but this seemed to be one legacy line that had not been yet addressed. So in a word, this was, the regulations before were rather asymmetric. They did not allow or easily convey how things were to be changed. Wording was rescind such action in like manner, and in as an alternate, now we have more detailed information about how to switch from a partisan official ballot system to a nonpartisan official ballot system, or to an unofficial ballot system. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Questions from the senators? Senator Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The change to effective date on line 20
On page,
on it's a one pager. Is it a one pager? Am I on the right bill?
367?
Page 2, line 21 is the effective date.
Oh, 367. I had 67. Sorry about that.
we'll get to that later. I'll be back
Okay.
for that.
Senator Russer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, when I was reading the committee report,
Yes, sir.
looks like it came out of committee 10-7, but the committee report indicated that this was a unanimous vote due to some procedural issues.
On the amendment, it was unanimous, and matter of fact, there was bipartisan help on crafting some amendment for the amendment itself came out through, it was recommended by the minority group that some additional wording be around the unofficial ballot. That's where 66911A came from. And then some clarification in one of the other ones. I honestly don't, I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but there was cooperation on amending the original bill. And then I think the final vote out of committee was probably along bipartisan line,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Senator Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The way I read this doesn't affect cities, such as Manchester currently has nonpartisan elections. We require 2/3. Actually, we required a simple majority because you have to change the charter. It's in the charter. So it would go to the voters if we were to change that. This doesn't address that.
Yes, I believe
So-
that's in another, I'd have to go back and do some research, but I believe there's some provisions about towns and cities and, but if that's something that needs to be addressed, that's something that, and it is in separate regulations and you would like a change to that, I'd be happy to address that in another follow-up bill or something akin to that.
Sure.
If that would be helpful.
Follow up, if I may. So your intent is to satisfy towns in this bill?
Yes, there was, just in looking at the RSA, there seemed to be some confusion about how some towns express confusion about how to switch between various modes. And so this was simply to clarify it for them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because of the construct of the chapter, when you get into cities and towns, you no longer have a town meeting, okay? And so this is talking about changing how the people vote at a town meeting. Your charter in the city takes care of that along with other regulations. So this could only be applicable to a town through the town meeting, as I understand it.
Thank you for that clarification, Senator.
I guess I put a would you believe, so it's.
All
All right, any additional comments? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Berry.
My name is Representative Ross Berry, representing the towns of Ware and Goffstown, Chair of the House Legislative Committee. Senator, to answer your question, what happened here was originally the bill came out on a party line vote. Then we reconsidered it. We didn't take a roll call on the reconsideration. So we reconsidered it. We brought forward an amendment. The amendment passed unanimously. When the amendment passed unanimously, we passed it out with a voice vote unanimous. We passed it out on a roll call vote unanimously, but it was all undone because we didn't do a roll call on the initial reconsideration vote. So it was a procedural mess up. So it came to the floor as a split vote. But there was no actual minority report. The minority report said, look at the majority report. So it was all procedural kerfuffle. With that, I don't think there's anything really much else to say. I just wanted to clarify that. So if there's any questions, I'll have to answer on behalf of the committee, but otherwise,
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. That's the last person on my list. Is there anybody that changed their mind? Seeing none. The online sign up was 7 in support, 125 opposed. And with that, we'll close the public hearing, and in just a minute, we'll open the next hearing. Understood. Ready?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. For the record, I am Representative Diane Power. I represent the towns of Brookline, Mason, and Greenville in Hillsborough County, District 36. And I also serve as the chairman of the House Municipal and County Government Committee. This bipartisan bill was filed to clarify RSA 4111A town property because it came to my attention that this RSA is being both misinterpreted as well as misapplied. In that some town selectmen as well as town council, they believe that any long-term lease of unused town property must be renewed by the voters every 5 years. And I have two quick examples to share with you to illustrate what I'm talking about. So the first example is in 2019, the voters of the town of Brookline passed a warrant article authorizing the town selectmen to be able to enter into lease agreements of town property surrounding a pond to individual tenants for a term of 13 years. And this was ratified by the voters of the town. However, every 5 years, there's a warrant article renewing the authorization by the legislative body to allow the selectmen to be able to continue these leases for another 5 years. So we will see, as a result in 2024, we saw that warrant article for another 5 years. And then 5 years after that, we're going to see, and I say we because I happen to be a resident of Brookline, we'll then see another warrant article asking the voters to reauthorize the selectmen to lease these plots of land for another 3 years, which adds up to the 13. And the second example was just last year, as a part of a $500 million revitalization proposal project in the town of Hampton. The town wanted to enter into a lease with the abutter of less than 1/10 of a mile unused town road as part of this development project. And this road was part of the site plan for their proposal. And some interpreted that the legislative body would have to vote again every 5 years in order to allow the selectmen to continue to lease that short bit of road to the developer. Otherwise, the lease would terminate. And when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar project, it makes no sense for this to become part of the project if it has to be renewed every 5 years with the possibility that that renewal may not be granted. And in fact, the Senate attempted to address this issue through a non-germane amendment to a House bill. It was Senator Altschuler's amendment. Unfortunately, it failed. The committee of conference report, but I was involved with that, failed in the House. So to quickly discuss the bill language, under Section 2, the authority to rent or lease town property is clarified under the two options. So option 1 occurs in lines 7 through 8, and it simply states if the lease is less than 1 year, then the selectmen have the authority in RSA to enter into that lease. And then option 2 is under Section B, that would be lines 9 through 14. If the lease is greater than a year, then the legislative body can vote to give the select board the authority to enter into the specified lease for up to 99 years. And why 99 years? Because a municipal attorney, when I was drafting this, explained to me that 99 years is a very long time. And lines 11 through 14, that just clarifies that if this optional, what I call a blanket authority, is given to the selectmen to be able to enter into any leases of unused town property for up to 5 years, then that's under Roman numeral 3 in current RSA, then this authorization is not needed under Roman numeral 2. And also, importantly, on lines 20 and 21, there's an applicability statement that is added to protect any leases in place and under agreement if this bill should become law. So just to conclude, I think that it's important then that the legislature, when we see that statute is being misinterpreted and misapplied, that it would behoove us to clarify that. So I would ask that this committee consider this legislation and recommend ought to pass. And that
Questions from the senators?
concludes my presentation.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're the only one that's signed up to testify. Is there anybody that changed their mind, wants to testify? Seeing none, the online sign up was 1 support, 2 opposed. And with that, we'll close the public hearing and open the next one in just a minute. Are copies of the amendment out on table? No, of the 1 to 67. Yeah. Senators, do you both have copies of the amendment? All right. Up in the corner. Okay. Anybody who's testifying on the bill, and there's a big long list here, but a lot of say no, make sure that you get a copy of the amendment, because it's a replace all amendment. 67. The amendment is 1641. Or 15, I guess there's 2 of them. I must not have liked the first one or something. All right, you're passing out 1641. Aaron, do you know what the difference is between 1641 and 1598? Come on up.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Gray, and thank you, members of the Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee. For the record, my name is Robert Wary. I'm a representative for the great town of Hudson, Hillsborough District 13. I'm here to introduce House Bill 67, and I'd like to speak to it briefly. And I'm also I'm looking at the amendment as well. It looks pretty good. So I'm enthusiastic about that possibility there.
I'm going to ask the Deputy Secretary of State to testify next so that she can tell me how I messed this up.
All right, thank you. So just as a little history, Representative Page introduced this bill as a pilot program last term. I facilitated an amendment, and so we've returned to really move this into a permanent status from the pilot program. This is a subject near and dear to my heart. I testified previously. My wife taught at Perkins School for the Blind for 10 years, and so this is a very important topic to me. And I think I will also convey that when this was brought before the House committee, we heard some horrific stories about how voters were disenfranchised or not dealt with in a respectful manner. And so because of that, you'll see every vote on this bill has passed unanimously. So it's a very simple bill. It just changes it from the pilot to a permanent agreement. And with that, I'd be happy to try and take any questions if you have any.
Questions from the senators? Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Deputy Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Erin Hennessy. I am the Deputy Secretary of State, and I just want to give a little bit more background about this bill. Last year, the House passed 1264, which put into state law the mandatory use of accessible voting systems in school, town, and city elections that have adopted the paper ballot system of voting. This was something new to the state of New Hampshire. Previously, we had followed the federal law requiring the state use of accessible voting system in state and federal elections, which we have been doing for many, many years now. So the legislature passed this, and in passing the requirement, they required a pilot program of our office to enter into agreements with cities and towns for the use of our current accessible voting equipment, the One for All system. And for those who have seen the system previously, or used it, perhaps you, Mr. Chair, may have set it up in your previous role as moderator. This system is a little bit clunky. It's difficult for a election official to set up. It has many moving parts, and you have to set everything up in a certain order. It has many different pieces, electronic pieces, printer and such, that if one of them breaks, we have to get new equipment out into the field. So this system we are planning to upgrade, and we are in the process of putting out an RFP for the system. And we plan to replace it hopefully by the end of this calendar year, so by December. The bill before us, HB 67, makes the use of the state's equipment permanent, so it gets rid of the pilot agreement with the state in the local elections. So we will plan on purchasing the new equipment that hopefully will not only be easier for local election officials to set up and get programmed, but also for the users of the system, and anyone can use an accessible voting system, for them to actually use the system. The amendment, and I'm happy to discuss what the difference between the two is, and that you had.
I might be able to help you.
Yeah.
Okay. When I originally got the amendment, I questioned how they did the changing of the date in a previous chapter law. Okay. And then I had them redo it on 1641 to make it easier to understand and actually technically correct. So anybody that's got 1598, it's exactly the same until you get down to line 28 on page 1. And then it's just the effective date stuff that's underneath that changes. And what we do in the new one is repeal the old chapter law and then change the date. Okay? If that's correct, is it?
Yes, I believe that's the only
right.
difference. So in the pilot program, our office, even though we had a state general and state primary after the bill was passed by the legislature, we did our best, and I think our team did a fabulous job with extra hours and long days, putting together a program to get out to every local polling location for their March elections, the accessible voting equipment, figuring out how to get them programmed locally, working with our vendor to get them programmed. On the House side of things, we did not have feedback from the elections, the local elections at this time. So after the elections, the March town elections and school elections, I worked with Senator Gray on the amendment before you. What's not included in the amendment is some of the feedback we got from local election officials, particularly in very small polling locations that have in the past set up the accessible voting equipment for state and federal elections, but have had no voters come in to choose to use that. The cost of from our current vendor to program for a local election at a minimum was $600 per ballot style. When you go to vote, for example, when I go to vote in Littleton, I get 2 different ballot styles. I get my town ballot and I get my school ballot. So some of these small locations may have been paying $1,200 or perhaps even $1,800 if they have 2 school districts that they're members of to have the files programmed. So this was an unexpected expense in the by the towns. We got a lot of pushback and feedback from select boards because this was not in their budget. What I will say to that is that our office is in our RFP process. We are going to really be looking at the cost of the accessible voting systems, what it costs the state for our state election purposes, but what it would cost the local cities and towns and schools for their local elections. What is in the amendment is some of the confusion that we encountered with the difference between a school clerk and a city or town clerk. In some cities and towns, they will have the town election ballot and the school election ballot at the same location at the same day for those elections, and they would use the one for all program to 2 different elections for that purpose. However, in other locations, they will have a town election on one day and a school election or multiple school elections on different days. And I just wanted to make it clear in law that if the state is sharing our equipment, accessible voting equipment with local election officials, the town or city clerk is going to be the custodian of that equipment, and that a school clerk, if they are also not the town clerk, will work with the city or town clerk to obtain that equipment for use in their school elections. And then we moved back the date of the pilot program to end in December of 25. In the event we do not get our new equipment and a very formal agreement set up between us and city and town clerks prior to that date. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Barry? While he's getting up here, I want you to know that everyone that signed in is signed in support. So, you know, again, in the spirit of, keeping this going quickly, please don't repeat stuff that other people have said. Representative.
Good morning. I'm Representative Ross Berry, Chair of the House Election Law Committee, represent the town of Goffstown and Ware. So I won't need to repeat everything that was just said. I just want to raise some concerns about the bill that has come since we've passed it. I don't want that to be misconstrued as not supporting the bill at all. I still fully support the bill, but just I feel it is my duty to bring these concerns to you. I have received to a lot of what the Deputy Secretary was saying from some of these smaller towns. They're concerned about the costs. So I don't want to delay the implementation of it. I wouldn't want to do anything like that, but I do think we need to kind of consider that because to this Deputy Secretary's point, some of these programming costs are coming back a lot higher than what was originally presented to us. So I don't exactly know how you would do that. The kind of the first thing that came to my mind was, does a town use the ballot counting devices, or are they still doing the paper folded ballots? Another thing that I considered was, have they had a request for this in the past? Have they used them in the past? Because I have heard from quite a few moderators that they've never used these machines, and my response to them is obvious, which is you don't need them until you need them, and you may not know you need them until you need them, and you don't want to. The word of caution that I give to the towns is you don't want to try to save $700-800 and then get hit with $100,000 lawsuit. So they don't really love that answer, just so you know. So I will leave it to the Senate if you want to address that problem at all. But what I do want to clarify again is it doesn't change my position on the bill. It certainly doesn't change the House's position on the bill. But I think it's something for you guys to consider. And if you could find a fix, we would certainly, I think, would be amenable to it.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you. Just, all right. I'm going to, if there's anybody that says they gotta testify, we'll let them, but what I'd like to do is just go into executive session and take a vote on the bill because there's no opposition to it, okay? And Representative Barry's information we can take care of in the next session because I really don't have a chance to go through and get this all done before. So with that, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. No, I did not. Because I wanted to have the other people, if they wanted to say something afterward, I'd still take them. Yes, ma'am. All right. I will move ought to pass on House Bill 67.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move consent.
We have a motion for consent. I'll second. Okay. Senator Perkins Coker seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Oh, the amendment. I got ahead of myself. Retracting all of that. All right, let's go back to the amendment. The amendment number is 1641S. Okay, the motion is to pass the amendment 1641S, and I will move that. Senator Rochford will second it. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And the bill as amended, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And consent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. I'll take it out. And do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Okay, motion to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right. Now, is there anybody that feels they have to testify now that we've passed the bill? Come on up. I'll let you go.
My name is Andrew Harmon. I'm a resident of New Hampton, New Hampshire. I want to thank the committee for passing the bill. The reason I wanted to speak is that I work part-time as an independent contractor doing accessibility testing for both websites and smartphone applications. And so I want to say that if some of the issues that were raised have to do with the people not being aware, I think in terms of towns not having people asking for it, it may be that people aren't aware that the system is available, or they may have tried it in the past and had enough issues that they decided it wasn't reliable. And so I think making sure that the townspeople are aware of the system, and also having this testing will help try and ensure that it is available and that it is worth the investment, because it is absolutely worth the investment. As far as I know, I'm the only person in my town in New Hampton that's used the system. And while there are some small flaws in it, they are easily handled with just a few small changes to the text for the items. And it is a very smooth process. I was able to get in and out and vote in about 20 minutes. And using a paper ballot, if I had to do that with a moderator, it would have taken me at least an hour to be able to complete my vote. And it would not have been either private or accessible that way. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And with that, we'll close the public hearing too. And we'll do the next bill in just a minute. I did not read the online. The online for 67 is 182 to 3. Or is it? Representative Ohm, you didn't sign in, but come on up.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I have written testimony which I'd like to pass out. It's a brief summary of my brief comments.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So for the record, Representative Ohm, Hillsborough 10, City of Nashua. The bill addresses the potential change to current law on political committees and reporting. So I'd like to first describe the summary of what I'm talking about, which is what the current law is on RSA 664:6.
Briefly, the senators are well aware of that law, so
You are the experts.
very briefly.
Talk about the relevant factors that this bill would change, and then the purpose of the bill itself. So the relevant factor on 6646 as effective January 1 of 2025 requires 9 itemized statements, reporting statements over the 2-year election cycle. And that reporting statements end at the end of the election, late November. Then there's a gap to early June before the reporting cycle begins again. However, there's still an itemized statement required within 48 hours of two political committees on expenditures over $1,000. That's in Section 3 of the relevant law. So let's get back to the bill I proposed. It proposes that the disclosure of receipts over $1,000 be triggered when a receipt of over $1,000 is received. Anything 1,000 or below would be exempt. Anything over 1,000 would require triggering of reporting. The second thing the bill does is it applies to both political committees, where typically most of the campaign contributions go, and also individual legislators if it's to a personal account as well. And that includes the 48-hour reporting notice of expenditures and contributions over $1,000. And it continues the monthly reporting from the end of the campaign, which is the end of November, through the first legislative year ending in June. So what's the purpose of this proposed change in the law? The purpose is transparency. We all know that it's expensive to run a campaign. We all know that we have to start right away after the first election to be prepared for the second election. And so during this period when we're properly raising funds for the next biennium, we are still voting on bills that are coming before us. And I think in the interest of transparency, it's important to reveal any contributions we take during the 6-month window when we are voting on bills that affect all of our constituents. And particular report on bills that have a constituent that may have an interest in the bill that's before us. So that's the purpose of the amendment, is to add transparencies to the process of our proper fundraising and proper disclosure on a timely basis when those funds are coming in during the periods where we are voting on such bills. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Representative Berry.
Morning again, Representative Ross Berry, represent the towns of Ware and Goffstown, Hillsborough 44. I'm also the chair of the House Election Law Committee. The House Election Law Committee did not receive this bill. We never had a public hearing on it. We weren't asked for our input on it. It was amended in legislative admin and exclusively became an election law bill. We didn't find out about it until it was put on the consent calendar, and it was too late. That's the procedural part of me, so I'm now taking off my election law chair hat because that's the committee's, and now putting on my own. I've spoken with the ranking member of the election law committee and the vice chair of the committee. We would all oppose to this bill. It would nearly double the reporting requirements. It also selectively targets elected state senators and elected state representatives. It doesn't include executive counselors. It doesn't include governors. It creates basically, if you receive or spend $1,000, you are now triggered into a 48-hour report. It doesn't encapsulate how that would include if you receive $1,000 on a holiday weekend. If you're not registered inside of the online CFS system. The Election Law Committee did a big run at RSA 664 last term. We formed a subcommittee. We met over the summer. No one was interested in this. And I appreciate what the representative is trying to do, basically trying to say we don't want impropriety with these $1,000 donations, but it seems very arbitrary, it seems very targeted, and I would urge the committee to inexpediently legislate it, because it's not every day that Representative Lane and I agree that something on election campaign finance is a bad idea, but we certainly believe that this is a bad idea.
Questions from the senators. Would you believe that this Deputy Secretary of State has told me that that would cause reprogramming of the system to be able to allow these interim reports to be done?
Of course it would.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Anyone else that didn't sign up wants to sign up? Seeing none. The online, I guess I don't have an online sheet for that, but there may not have been anybody. So, with that, we will close the public hearing and go into executive session if I have a motion. I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. We are in executive session. I will move ITL on 546.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Do I have a motion for consent?
Second.
I have a motion for consent from Senator Rochford, seconded by Senator Perkins Coca. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And I'll take that one out too. All right. I do want to discuss HB 464. One of the things that surprises me about the testimony that we had about people who, you know, if I can get those lists ready for the next election, why I wouldn't do it, because there's no way to reject a voter by looking at that data. If they're not there, there's no proof that they did or didn't. So the only thing in delaying it would be that I would reject a voter that I wouldn't have normally had to reject. And also the discussion about the time it would take. These reports, if you look at the bill, they're going to be ready at the city hall too. So if someone comes in to register at city hall, you know, right now, if a clerk, as I understand it, wants to look up a vital record of somebody who's not in their town, you have to pay $15. If you don't pay the $15, you can't look up the record. How does that make sense? Downloading the database, you know, so that it's available, so they can go in and look at it, looking at the voter records, which they already have access to, and the DMV. When I said to the DMV, do you copy down the place of birth? They says, no, we don't copy down the place of birth. We have the birth certificate that we've scanned into the system, but we have a checkbox for citizenship. Whoa. Now, we're having discussions as to the director of the DMV, whether that checkbox is self-reported or, from the data that was given. And we'll go look at that. But if it is checked, I don't believe that piece of data is on the application, and I will go check it before we come back. But if it is the person at the DMV that's checking that box off, that's more likely than not that they are our citizen and have proved it. So to go just a little further, the Secretary of State's office would like a couple of small changes. If a person's registration is not current, okay, by changing the words on, I guess it'd be page 2, line 4, and line 11. And we'll have this amendment drafted up because I don't want to mess with you today. If you change that between applicant and is, you say was previously or is currently registered, that will take care of that. So if somebody hasn't voted in 4 years, they didn't bring a copy of their birth certificate with them and all of that, and that will take care of that part. On page 3, line 32, they would like to add in the supervisors of the checklist. So we'd move the and all that good stuff in the amendment. And then the effective dates. Secretary of State would like to have the effective date for Section 5 to be 1st of February, and for 9 and 10 to be the last day in December. That's not hard to do either. The Secretary of State has the ability right now to talk to the DMV and decide which data fields are downloaded, okay? If it's a record that's already there, the existing law says that they can do it. Back on the first page, on line 23, adding the determinant of voters' eligibility, I know somebody wanted to reword that, but I don't necessarily think you need to. But that section in there, whether they could do that or not, because the rest of it talks about checking the database to make sure that it's accurate. And the last part that I wanted to talk about was the court system. If a person comes in and says, hey, I don't live in that county anymore, so I'm not eligible for that jury. Or if a person comes in and says, I'm not a citizen, we need to know that, okay? So, because the voter records can be updated. So with that, I'll take any comments from you guys. I'll go have the thing drafted, and whoever sees Olivia, tell her she probably needs to come into my office and talk about some of her comments, because any other comments on that one?
Yeah, just a couple questions for you, Chair.
Yeah.
You just went over a couple dates at the end, and I missed one of them. You said sections 9 and 10 would go into effect December 31st
This year.
this year.
This year.
And then you mentioned another section would go into effect end of February.
Right. The existing line 11 would, instead of 180 days after passage,
Yep.
would be the 1st of February.
Okay.
And that's, if there's any delay in the governor signing it,
Yeah.
we want it effective for the next, round of
Um,
town elections.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
Senator Long?
Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, just to, I know you said earlier that you needed to add previously to currently. Is
That-
that what you took care of with the was?
On line, yeah,
Was or-
on line 4 and on line 11. And it says applicant
Okay, yeah.
is currently. And so by inserting in between the applicant and is, it says was previously or is currently.
Yep.
That takes care of that. And the person who had their name taken off in the hopefully 6-year purge will be able to go in and not have to reprove citizenship or age
Okay.
by that change.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
The way you're talking about it somewhat answers this, but is in your conversations with these agencies, is the idea that this is a downloadable file so that in locations where we don't have internet, which currently is not allowed in our poll book,
Right. This
it's
does not,
updated the night before or something like that?
this does not restrict the Secretary of State from the method of providing those records. It says he will provide them. Okay. Certainly they are checking right now to make sure how many of these polling places actually do have the internet, because that would be the simplest way to do it.
Yep,
A tablet could be used to look up the databases.
yep.
And in places that, may not have either, certainly you could call up. And in my experience, that would be smaller localities, fewer voters. This could actually save time in registration, because if the person says, oh, I was registered in Manchester 2, and now this is Manchester 7. Go into the database. Oh, yep. Oh, you're good. Go on about your business.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? All right. Let's go back to some of the other stuff. And I know that Senator Lang wants to come back, but he is meeting with the governor right now. I don't pull the right files out, I won't have the right thing to talk about. All right, what did I do with my list? House Bill, was it 151? All right. We did do one bill while you were out, or 2 bills.
Two.
The accessible voting machines, we did interrupted our deliberations and went to that. And then we also did, which one?
It's bill number.
Yeah, 546, the $1,000 you have to report.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
What was the motion? No?
kill it.
Yeah.
Okay. On 151, checking with the Secretary of State, and she just left. For the supervisors in a city or town, charter would have to be examined for each of the cities to determine if they already have something set in place for the supervisors that is proposed law would not change. All right, so with this, I think you've got two choices. You either go to 2 years or 4 years, okay? And if you do this, and it is in the city charter, as best I know, it will not change the city charter. Or I guess there's a third option, and that's ITL the bill. What is the desire of this committee? Don't care? Don't care?
I'd say amended, yeah.
Amended to 2 years.
Amended to 2 years. All right.
We had
so
nobody opposed the bill that testified.
we have a motion of ought to pass by Senator Lang, and I'll second that. And then we have a committee amendment to change line 6, right, from 3 years to 2 years. And Senator Lang will move the amendment, and I will second it. Further comments? All right, voting on the committee amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And the bill as amended. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move consent.
And we have a
Second.
motion for consent. Senator Lang, I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. And does anybody want to take that one out?
I'll take it. Or
Dave,
go.
give it to
Okay.
I'll take it.
Senator Roachford. Okay. 421.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll move auto pass on 421. I do have an amendment that
OTP by Senator Lang, seconded by
I'll second that.
Senator Roachford.
I'd offer amendment number 1858S.
I think you've all got that. Describe the changes in your amendment, please, sir.
Absolutely. So most of the work is all done in the bottom of that page where we basically say that the towns will post notice 60 days prior to the required filing date. And then 7 days after the filing date, they'll send notices out to any charitable organization approved in the prior year, but that have not yet filed. Just to give them a heads up that they forgot their paperwork.
So as long as they file properly, we won't have to send out as many notices. And it gives me a time period when they should be looking at that anyway and understanding their obligation. Okay. So Senator Lang moves his amendment. I'll second it. Any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The bill as amended. Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move consent.
We have
Second.
all those in favor of consent say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And Senator Lang, you've got it. I lost my little cheat sheet somewhere, son. Oh, here it is. All right. Absentee ballots, 217. Now, we have our bill over in the House. I don't know what they're going to do with it. The language in here, except for the more likely than not, is pretty much the same. Certainly, we can pass it and take care of it on whether, well, I guess if we would have to amend it to do that, so. Or we can hold on to it till next year.
Well,
I particularly since so many people have over the years said, well, gee, I don't know if I qualify because it says I'm going to be out of town. But discussion from the committee.
As you know, Chair, I am of the opinion that we don't need either bill. However, if we're going to pass one, I prefer your language. So I would prefer we stick with the Senate position on this issue.
Anybody else want to talk?
I agree. I think you either ITL or retain this bill. Either one works for me.
I'll move ITL.
Okay. Senator Perkins Coker moves ITL.
Second?
What did you say?
I'll second.
Senator Long seconds it. All right. It's a bad optic for the Republicans to pass this, okay, or to ITL.
Okay.
So I will probably vote against the ITL. I would have preferred the retained motion so that it kept it for the next year because of the optics, okay? Because I do support the things that the bill is talking about. So with that,
Mr. Chair, if I may. So again, I'm actually going to support the ITL because again, I think the Senate position was clear. We gave them a bill. This bill is different than the Senate position. And while I support the changing of it, I don't think, again, I think we've made the best possible case in the previous bill. And so my vote to ITL isn't a vote against the concept of the bill, just the language of this bill versus ours.
and I'm just looking at the campaign things that are going to come in, you know. So again, if any further discussion, all right. All those in favor of ITL say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Nay. It's 4-1.
Move consent.
We have a motion for consent. Did you second that, Dave?
Consent.
I'll second that. Yes.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of consent? Wait.
I think, well, we can put on consent. It may reappear, but we may want to talk about this one.
About the bill?
Yeah.
If I'm going to do something, I probably would want to do it now. So right now, we'd have to have a motion to reconsider all those. Do you want to reconsider?
No, I'm just saying I would rather we don't put it on consent.
Okay.
Apologies, Chair. Yeah,
We won't go on consent then.
we'll speak to the Senate position on this.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And Senator Perkins Coker is going to take it up.
Oh, okay.
Be careful what you wish for.
Clever.
She made the motion to pass it or to ITL it.
I did.
Okay, 274. 274 relative to our position in the Senate bill is much better than this one. So I will move ITL.
I'll second that.
Further discussion?
I agree with you, Chair.
All those in favor of ITL say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move
Consent.
consent.
Senator
Second.
Lang and Senator Perkins Coker. All those in favor of consent say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Anybody really want to take it out? I can do it.
All yours, Senator.
I'll do it. Uh, 340. is relative to electioneering.
Chairman, if you're ready to bring this bill up for consideration, I think this bill creates a whole lot of confusion that our employees don't need to be distracted by, so I would move ITL on this.
Seeing no second, I will move.
I'll second
Too late.
it.
Too late.
Looking for it.
I'll move to retain the bill.
I'll second.
Re-refer, I should.
I'll second the re-refer.
All right, next time I'll have my elbow.
There you go. That'll help. You know, I'm not afraid of being the only vote, one way or the other. All right, so we have a motion to re-refer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move
Re-refer.
consent.
We have a motion for consent, and all those in favor of consent say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and I'll take this one out too, since I had a short clock or whatever. All right. We already did that one. 464, we'll do the amendment. 481. Did we do 481 or did we not do 481? We did not? Okay. I must have been looking at some other bill and had this one open. All right. Moving the date of the state primary.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Certainly.
So, the House has our Senate version of this bill.
Yep.
They made one amendment, which I think is actually better, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. But it has to do with filing papers, nomination paperwork that corrected some dates.
Yep.
I think in that bill, the Senate version as amended over in the House is a better bill than this one.
So I think I just heard a motion for re-refer.
Re-refer, yes.
Question
Just to see what happens with the bill over there.
before the vote on that.
Second.
I'll second.
Oh, sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Senator Ling, do you know if the amendment over on the House side includes a change to the effective date?
I don't recall
Okay.
whether it did. I remember it had to do with nomination paperwork, papers. They found some other places in law it had to be adjusted
Yeah.
to deal with the nomination papers. So.
Yeah, which I'm supportive of that change as well. This version takes effect January 1st, 27. So I'm only raising that to say if we wanted to adjust it to January 1st of 28, we might want to hang on to our version so we can have that conversation, but
That's
Well,
why
I
we
don't think
referred
it
this
makes a
one. So.
huge difference.
If we re-refer it, we have to make our recommendation. We'll have some meetings in probably November to take care of all the re-refer ones.
Yep.
This will be 4 bills that have been re-referred, and then they'll go to the floor. And since this is a House bill, as soon as we pass it in January, it'll go right to the House. So if they want to act on it at that time, should that other bill have a problem. Okay, so
Okay.
the motion before us is to re-refer. All those in favor of re-refer, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Move consent.
We have a motion for
Second.
consent. All those in favor of consent, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Who wants to take this?
I'll take it out, Mr. Chair.
Senator Lang. All right, that's all the old ones. The adopting town partisan elections. There were a lot of people who signed in opposed. Let's have a little discussion before we take a motion on this one. Have any discussion?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I missed the testimony I was out. So I did have a question about once you make it a partisan election, is there a requirement for a primary at that point? To narrow down the candidates? I wasn't sure. Once you make it partisan, you have, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans running for one office. To all 6 names, is it the only difference is that the RD is put at the end of the name, or how do what is?
I think that's a great question. And I'll let you ask the Secretary of State.
Okay.
And we'll hold that for next week. 373. One support, two no, and that was. I didn't see anything really objectionable in the town thing. What are you guys' feelings?
Seemed essentially like a restatement of law. Obviously makes a few tweaks, but
I'll move on to pass.
Second?
Further comments? All those in favor ought to pass, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move consent?
I have a motion for consent by Senator Lang. I'll second it. All those in favor of consent say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And since I made the motion, I'll take that one out too.
I'm on it, so if you don't want it, I'll take it.
Okay, you're on it.
Surprise,
Cross out the
surprise.
G, put on the R. And
I said, geez, this sounds familiar, right? It sounds like a familiar bill.
okay.
want to discuss your germane?
Sure. Go ahead.
I don't have any questions. I just didn't know if you wanted to talk about it since we talked about the non-germane for 464.
The germane amendment,
If you're planning to still offer it.
I'm still going to have it modified. We'll have the two amendments put together. But the germane part, the wording that they used is inaccurate, and let me get down to it here. All this time working on it, and can't even find the real bill. All right, I'll try to do it from memory. The words they use, the inspectors of election should not be in there. They're not on the ballot, never will be on the ballot. They're appointed by the political parties. Oh, I probably have it here. No, I don't have it here. Oh, I got it. Well, I don't have the, I guess, is that 67? No, that's all right. But the section that I modified, I need 640s.
This is as amended by the House.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it.
So the existing words says with, the original one said the exception of the candidate standing for office, moderator, assistant moderator, clerk, select person, the inspector of election doesn't stand for election, so that needed to come out. And supervised with the checklist, no person appears on the ballot, count ballots prior to the election. We let them do a whole lot of stuff behind the thing, and I just thought that these words were clarifying, with the exception of the persons holding and who are candidates for only an election, okay, official position. That's why I said it that way. Is there anyone that objects to those words or wants to change them before I had the rest of it drafted?
As a sitting moderator, I think it's just fine.
All right. And with that, we've already done 67. And I think that we're pretty in good shape for going forward.
What was the outcome on 67?
67,
Ought to pass. Yeah.
On consent, or what was it, about
Yeah.
5-0?
Put it
4-0,
4-0?
yeah.
4-0, yeah.
So I wanted to bring up, if we're talking about some other things, Senate Bill 225 was a bill that we passed out of here early on.
Yep.
It was requiring public notice before reassessment. The bill that we heard testimony on, we worked with some of the concerns, we amended the bill, got to a point, came out of here unanimously, went on consent, went to the House and they killed it. So I don't know if there's any opportunity to send that back to them, either in one of our bills we've got or other ways, but I thought it was a very reasonable bill.
225?
It was requiring public notice before reassessment of property values for tax purposes.
Senator Abar's surprise assessment bill.
Yeah. But I don't know if we're still looking at.
Any bill that we're still working on, it could be amended to by the Senate rules, because that was the Senate's position. And what the Senate rules say is that if the Senate position is positive, then it can be amended to any other bill. The question that I would have is that a hill you want to die on now, or do you want to kick it to next year and modify it enough that you take into consideration some of the objections of the House and do it? And, you know, I don't want to load House Bill 2 down on things like the House did. In fact, I want to take out a lot of the stuff that they stuck in there, especially the ones that we have the bill on. So my opinion would be this, is that if you want to put it into one of the bills that we still have here in election law, then that is possible, and you could write an amendment for that. Whether you should do it or not, that's up to you. Any other comments about that situation?
My parents used to tell me a lot of things I shouldn't do, and I did them anyway. So, we'll hopefully I've matured a little more than that.
I didn't say you should or
All
you
right.
shouldn't. I just tried to tell you what your options are.
I got it. Yep. 10-4.
All right. Anything else to come into executive session? Seeing none, motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and our business today being complete, we are adjourned.